The dim hum of the karaoke bar's ventilation system mingled with the sharp tang of soju and cigarette smoke, a haze that clung to the velvet curtains like a second skin. In the heart of Los Angeles's Koreatown, the Golden Dragon wasn't just a place for late-night revelry. It was a neutral ground where deals were whispered and alliances tested under the flicker of neon lights. Outside, the rain-slicked streets reflected the glow of sodium lamps, puddles mirroring the endless stream of taillights from rush-hour traffic that never quite died down. Kang Ji-hoon sat at the corner booth, his broad shoulders casting a shadow over the polished mahogany table. At 38, he was the unchallenged head of the Hanseong Syndicate, a network built on shipping routes, underground finance, and the ironclad control of import docks from Long Beach to the ports of Busan. His face, sharp and unyielding, bore the faint scar from a knife fight in his youth, a reminder of the code he lived by: protect your own, strike only when necessary, and never let sentiment cloud the ledger. Tonight, he was meeting with a rival faction's underboss, a wiry man named Park, who controlled the counterfeit cigarette trade, filtering through the warehouses. The conversation was clipped, voices low amid the muffled strains of a ballad crooning from the speakers. "Your roots are cutting into my manifests," Ji-hoon said, his tone even, eyes fixed on Park's like a predator sizing up prey. "Fix it, or I'll have to adjust the balance myself." The Park shifted in his seat, fingers drumming on a glass tumbler. "It's business, Kang. No hard feelings. We'll talk numbers." A sudden scuffle at the bar cut him off. The door to the private lounge swung open, letting in a gust of damp night air. A boy, no older than 8, stumbled in, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. He was soaked through, dark hair plastered to his forehead, clutching a frayed backpack like a lifeline. The room's chatter died. Security men, 2 burly figures in ill-fitting suits, half rising from their posts. The boy froze, scanning the faces until his gaze landed on Ji-hoon. He weaved through the tables, ignoring the outstretched hands trying to intercept him, and stopped right at the booth. Up close, his eyes were wide, red-rimmed from crying or cold, and his voice came out in a breathless rush, laced with a child's unfiltered fear. "Mister, I can't find my sister. She can't talk." Ji-hoon straightened, the subtle tension in his posture vanishing as if a switch had flipped. The underboss meeting, the ledgers, the rain, it all receded. He stood instantly, his 6-foot frame unfolding with a grace that belied his power, chair scraping back against the floor. The boy didn't flinch. Instead, he grabbed the edge of Ji-hoon's suit jacket, tiny fingers twisting the fabric. "She's gone," the boy continued, words tumbling out. "We were by the river, the one with the big bridge. She was watching the boats, and then some men came. They had a van, black one, no lights. I hid in the bushes, but she didn't run fast enough. She can't talk, mister. She tries to yell, but nothing comes out. Please, you have to help." The bar's ambient noise seemed to swell, a distant clink of glasses underscoring the boy's plea. Ji-hoon knelt to the child's level, his voice softening in a way that made Park's eyes narrow in surprise. No one had seen the boss like this, not since the whispers of his own losses years ago, a family fractured by a rival's betrayal. "What's your name, kid?" Ji-hoon asked, his hand steady on the boy's shoulder. "Min-soo," he whispered. "Soo-jin's my sister. She's 12. We live near the docks with our Halmione, but she's sick, so Soo-jin takes me out sometimes. Tonight it was raining, and we were just walking." Ji-hoon's mind raced, piecing it together. The Los Angeles River, that concrete vein snaking through the city, wasn't a playground. It was a smuggling corridor. Vans without lights? That screamed abduction, likely tied to the human trafficking rings that nipped at the edges of his operations. Or worse, a message from a faction like Park's, testing boundaries. He glanced at his security lead, a former Marine named Torres, who was already on his phone, murmuring coordinates into the line. "Stay here with me, Min-soo," Ji-hoon said, signaling Torres to get the boy a blanket and hot tea. He turned to Park, the warmth in his eyes hardening back to steel. "Meeting's over. If this ties back to your people, you'll regret it." Park raised his hands, no feigning innocence, but his gaze darted to the door. "Hey, Kang, we're not in that game. Kids, that's low even for the streets." Ji-hoon ignored him, already moving. He scooped Min-soo up without a word, the boy's weight light against his chest, and headed for the exit. The rain had picked up, drumming against the awning as they stepped out into the alley. Torres flanked them, radio crackling with updates. Team en route to the riverbank. No visual on a black van yet, but patrols report a disturbance near the 6th Street Bridge. In the back of the armored SUV that pulled up curbside, Ji-hoon settled Min-soo on the leather seat, the interior smelling of polished wood and faint gun oil. The boy shivered, but his grip on Ji-hoon's sleeve didn't loosen. "Why'd you stand up like that? Everyone else just stared." Ji-hoon met his eyes, the city's lights streaking past the tinted windows. "Because no one leaves a kid behind, not on my watch." It was more than that, though, an echo of his own past. The sister he'd lost to a drive-by years ago, her voice silenced forever in the chaos of gang crossfire. That code, the one that kept him from becoming the monster others feared, surged now. Innocence didn't pay for the sins of the shadows. As the SUV sped toward the river, tires hissing on wet asphalt, Ji-hoon's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The girl is safe, for now. Meet at the old warehouse on Alameda. Come alone." No demands, no trace, just a burner ping, routed through proxies that his tech guy would spend hours decoding. Torres cursed under his breath. "Boss, this smells like a setup. Rivals, maybe the triads pushing in from the east." Ji-hoon nodded, his jaw set. "Then we walk into it smart. Get eyes on that warehouse, drones if we have to, and pull the shipping manifests from the docks. If a van was involved, it'll show in the logs." The river loomed ahead, its floodlights cutting through the storm like accusatory beams. Min-soo pressed closer, whispering, "You think you can find her? She draws pictures when she can't say stuff. She draws good." Ji-hoon didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the dark water churning below the bridge. The van, the men, the sister's silence, it all pointed to something deeper, a thread unraveling in his tightly woven empire. But as the first drops of rain blurred the windshield, one question burned. Who had sent the boy straight to him, and what debt was this pulling him into? The SUV cut through the downpour like a blade, wipers slashing rhythmically against the relentless rain. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of wet leather and the faint, metallic tang of anxiety. Min-soo huddled against Ji-hoon's side, his small frame still trembling from the chill, though the heater blasted warm air. Ji-hoon kept one arm around the boy, his free hand scrolling through the encrypted app on his phone. The text from the burner number stared back at him. "The girl is safe, for now. Meet at the old warehouse on Alameda. Come alone." No signature, no leverage, just a hook baited with the promise of a mute girl's life. Torres gripped the wheel tighter, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "Boss, we can't roll up blind. I've got 2 teams circling the block, discreet, no lights. Drones are prepping for overhead, but this storm's messing with the signals." Ji-hoon nodded, his mind mapping the terrain. The Alameda warehouse district was a ghost town of rusting shipping containers and forgotten rail spurs, a stone's throw from the river's concrete banks. It had been a neutral drop point once, back when his father ran the syndicates, but lately whispers tied it to triad incursions, smugglers funneling girls across the Pacific, hidden in manifests labeled as textiles. If this was their play, testing his borders, it was bolder than a simple grab. And the boy, Min-soo, showing up at the Golden Dragon? That wasn't coincidence. Someone had pointed him there, like a pawn nudged across a board. Pull the van's plates from traffic cams near the 6th Street Bridge, Ji-hoon said, voice low and steady. Cross-reference with dock logs. If it's trafficking, it'll ping a route. Torres tapped his earpiece, relaying the order. The SUV banked onto Alameda Street, the sodium lights casting elongated shadows over chain-link fences topped with razor wire. Rain hammered the roof, drowning out the distant hum of generators from the active ports. Min-soo stirred, peering out the window at the looming silhouette of the warehouse, a hulking relic of corrugated metal, its windows boarded like blind eyes. "Why alone?" the boy asked, voice muffled against Ji-hoon's jacket. "The men who took her. They had masks. One had a tattoo, like a dragon on his neck." Ji-hoon's pulse quickened. A dragon, triad ink, unmistakable. But that didn't explain the text's precision. He glanced at Torres. "Drop us a block out. You shadow from the east side. Eyes on all exits. If it goes south, extract fast. No heroics." The SUV eased to a stop behind a stack of derelict pallets, engine idling low. Ji-hoon stepped out into the storm, rain soaking his overcoat instantly, the cold seeping through like fingers probing for weakness. He lifted Min-soo down, the boy's sneakers splashing in shallow puddles that smelled of oil and stagnant water. "Stay close, kid, and quiet." They moved toward the warehouse's side door, the wind whipping through the chain link, rattling it like loose teeth. Ji-hoon's senses sharpened, the subtle crunch of gravel underfoot, the faint drip from overhanging eaves, the way the shadows seemed to shift just beyond the floodlights. At the door, rusted and ajar, he paused, hand slipping inside his coat to the holstered Beretta. No lock, no guards visible, too easy. Pushing inside, the air turned stale, heavy with dust and the musty rot of old crates. Dim emergency lights buzzed overhead, casting pools of yellow on stacked pallets labeled in faded Korean. Electronics, fragile. Min-soo clung to his leg, eyes wide as they scanned the gloom. Footsteps echoed from deeper in, a deliberate tap like someone waiting. "Show yourself," Ji-hoon called, his voice cutting through the hum. No answer, but a scrape of metal followed. He advanced, guiding Min-soo behind a crate, the boy's breath coming in shallow bursts. In the center of the open floor, under a single hanging bulb, stood a figure. Slender, hooded, hands visible and empty. A woman, mid-20s, her face pale in the light, dark hair matted from the rain. She wasn't bound, but her posture screamed trapped, shoulders hunched, eyes darting to the shadows. Soo-jin, the sister. She opened her mouth, but only a faint rasp escaped. No words, just the silent plea of someone whose voice had been stolen long ago. Perhaps by trauma or some unspoken wound. Ji-hoon stopped 10 feet away, assessing. No visible wires, no snipers in the rafters. He'd bet Torres's drone feed confirmed it, but the air felt wrong, charged. "The boy said you were taken. This your idea of a welcome?" She shook her head frantically, pointing to a nearby table. On it lay a notepad and pen, scribbled urgently. "Not safe. They followed us from river. Want your routes. Use me as bait." Her hand trembled as she wrote, eyes flicking to the far door. Routes, his shipping lanes, the lifeblood of Hanseong. This wasn't random, it was surgical. Ji-hoon pulled out his phone, snapping a quick photo of the note before pocketing it. Who are they? Triads. A nod, then more scrawled words. Dragon tattoo, said you'd come for the boy, left him at bar to draw you. She glanced at Min-soo, who peeked out, relief flooding his face, but her expression hardened, protective, fierce. Ji-hoon's code flared, innocence as bait, unforgivable. He stepped closer, voice softening. "You're safe now, both of you." But as he reached for her arm, a low rumble shook the warehouse, the growl of engines outside, tires on gravel. Headlights pierced the boarded windows, multiple sets converging. Torres's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Boss, 3 vans, unmarked, blocking both ends. We've got incoming. Looks like an ambush." Sujin grabbed the pen again, writing fast. "Trap. They knew you'd bring backup." Her eyes met his, a spark of something unspoken, gratitude laced with wariness, the pull of a stranger's mercy in a world that offered none. Ji-hoon drew his weapon, positioning the siblings behind him. The side door burst open, rain and shadows spilling in, but in that split second, he caught a glint on the floor. A discarded burner phone, screen cracked, its last message glowing. "She's more than bait. She's the key." The engines revved closer, doors slamming. Who had planted that phone, and what secret did the silent girl hold that could unravel his empire? The warehouse doors rattled like thunderclaps as the first van's tires skidded to a halt outside, gravel spraying against the corrugated walls. Rain lashed through the gaps in the siding, carrying the acrid bite of exhaust and wet earth into the dim space. Ji-hoon shoved Sujin and Min-soo deeper behind the stack of crates, his Beretta steady in a two-handed grip, the cool metal grounding him amid the chaos. The air hummed with urgency, the low buzz of the emergency lights flickering as if straining against the storm, shadows dancing like specters across the dusty floor. "Stay down," he hissed to the siblings, his voice a low rumble that cut through Min-soo's whimpers. Sujin nodded, her eyes wide but resolute, pulling her brother close. She scribbled quickly on the notepad, "They have guns. Back exit sealed." Ji-hoon glanced toward the far wall, where a rusted loading door loomed, chained and padlocked from the inside. No time to cut it. The ambush was closing in. Torres's voice crackled again in his concealed earpiece, strained over the static. "Boss, we're pinned. 2 vans east, 1 west. Shots fired at my team. Drones show 6 hostiles. Armed heavy. Get out now." A burst of gunfire erupted outside, muffled pops echoing off the metal walls, followed by the sharp whine of ricocheting bullets. One punched through a boarded window, splintering wood and sending shards skittering across the concrete like brittle bones. Ji-hoon scooped up the discarded burner phone from the floor, its cracked screen still glowing faintly. He thumbed it open, no lock, just a single thread of messages. The last one, sent minutes ago. "She's more than bait. She's the key." Scrolling up, his jaw tightened. Earlier exchanges, time-stamped from the riverbank. "Kid to the bar. He knows the boss's face from Halmione's stories. Draw him out." And a reply, "Roots in exchange for the girl. Or we sell her east." The sender's number was spoofed, but an attached photo caught his eye, a blurry shot of Sujin by the river, her sketchpad open to a drawing of docks, cranes and labelled ships. Manifest details? His manifests? "Traitor," Ji-hoon muttered, pocketing the device. Someone inside his circle had fed intel, old grievances resurfacing, perhaps Park's underboss twisting the knife. The code he'd sworn by, the one that spared innocence, felt like a chain now, binding him to this trap. But walking away? That would shatter it. And him. The side door buckled under a heavy kick, hinges groaning as 2 figures burst in, masked, black-clad, the glint of dragon tattoos peeking from collars. Triad enforcers, pistols raised, rain dripping from their coats. "Kang!" One barked in accented English, voice thick with menace. "The girl comes with us. Your roots stay open, or she doesn't." Ji-hoon fired twice, precise shots that dropped the lead man clutching his knee, the second ducking behind a pallet with a curse. The acrid smell of gunpowder bloomed, mixing with the warehouse's musty rot. Sujin gasped silently, her hand clamping over Min-soo's mouth as the boy froze. Ji-hoon moved like a shadow, using the crates for cover, his polished shoes silent on the grit-slick floor. He flanked left, heart pounding in rhythm with the storm's roar outside. Another enforcer piled in from the main entrance, spraying bullets wildly, warning shots that chewed into the walls, sparks flying from struck metal. The lights overhead surged, then dimmed, a blackout. No, Sabotage. A cut power line, the emergency bulbs struggling on backup batteries. Darkness swallowed the edges of the space, sodium glow from outside filtering through cracks like hesitant spotlights in a noir film. Torres, breach the loading door. Explosives if you have to, Ji-hoon whispered into his comms. Dodging a bullet that whined past his ear, he returned fire, clipping the second intruder's shoulder, the man slumping with a guttural yell. But more were coming, footsteps pounding, radios crackling with Korean commands. Secure the girl. Boss wants her alive. Soo-jin tugged his sleeve, pointing to a side alcove half hidden by tarps. They scrambled toward it, Min-soo between them. The boy's breaths ragged. Inside, amid forgotten machinery and oily rags, she knelt and pried at a loose floor panel, vent access, rusted but yielding. Go, she mouthed, gesturing downward. A service tunnel likely for maintenance, snaking under the warehouse toward the river. Smart, her drawing mind mapping escapes where others saw walls. Ji-hoon hesitated, scanning for tails. The enforcers were regrouping, voices echoing. She's not here! Check the crates! He lowered himself first, the tunnel's chill air rising like a dank breath, smelling of mold and stagnant runoff. Soo-jin followed, helping Min-soo down, her movements fluid despite the fear etching her face. The panel clicked shut above them, just as flashlight beams swept the alcove. Crawling through the narrow space, elbows scraping rough concrete, Ji-hoon led the way. The tunnel amplified every sound, the drip of water, the distant thud of boots overhead, Min-soo's muffled sobs. His mind raced, the photo on the burner. Soo-jin's sketches weren't random. Had she seen something at the docks? A ledger discrepancy, a guard's tell? Their Halmione near the ports? Ties to his operations, perhaps unwitting. They emerged at the river's edge, tumbling into mud-slick grass under the bridge's shadow. Rain pelted them anew, the Los Angeles River churning black and furious below, floodlights from patrol boats cutting erratic paths across the water. Torres's team materialized from the gloom. 2 SUVs idling, no lights, engines humming low. "Clear," Torres said, bundling them inside. "But boss, that van from the river, plates traced to a shell corp. Yours, someone's spoofing your manifests." Ji-hoon settled the siblings in the back, Soo-jin wrapping Min-soo in a spare jacket, her eyes meeting his with a mix of relief and guarded trust. The pull was there, her autonomy clashing with the safety he'd just bought with blood and shadows, his possessiveness over his code demanding he shield them now. But as the convoy peeled away, tires hydroplaning on the slick road, he pulled out the burner again. One last message, incoming, even now. You have the key, but the lock's in your house. The safe house loomed ahead, a nondescript brick building in Echo Park, its windows barred and cameras whirring. Loyalty versus betrayal, who in his inner circle had sold the children's path straight to him, and what hidden ledger did the silent girl carry that could topple it all? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The safe house in Echo Park stood like a forgotten sentinel amid the neighborhood's eclectic sprawl, palm trees swaying in the residual wind, their fronds whispering against the rain-slicked rooftops. Streetlights cast a hazy amber glow on the cracked sidewalks, where the scent of wet jasmine mingled with the distant brine from the nearby lake. Inside, the air was warmer, laced with the faint aroma of instant ramen from the kitchenette and the subtle hum of dehumidifiers pulling moisture from the walls. Reinforced doors clicked shut behind them, the lock engaging with a solid thunk that echoed Ji-hoon's resolve. He guided Soo-jin and Min-soo to the living room, a sparse space furnished with mismatched leather couches and a low coffee table scarred from years of hurried meetings. Torres posted guards at the windows, their silhouettes sharp against the drawn blinds, radios murmuring static-laced updates. "Perimeter secure, boss. No tales from the warehouse, but that spoofed manifest. It's got your signature. Digital forgery, clean as a whistle. Ji-hoon nodded, peeling off his soaked overcoat and draping it over a chair. Water pooled on the hardwood floor, dark and spreading like spilled ink. Min-soo collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion etching lines on his young face. But his eyes followed Soo-jin as she settled beside him, her movements deliberate, scanning the room like a cornered animal assessing new terrain. She pulled the notepad from her pocket, the same one from the warehouse, and began sketching, lines fluid and urgent under the soft glow of a table lamp. "You're safe here," Ji-hoon said, lowering himself into an armchair across from them. His voice carried the weight of command, softened by something rarer, genuine concern. The code that governed his world, no innocents harmed, debts paid in protection, had pulled him into this, but now it tangled with a deeper pull. Soo-jin's silence wasn't just absence, it was a barrier, her independence a quiet defiance that mirrored his own guarded autonomy. He wanted to shield her, possess that fragile trust, yet he sensed her wariness, the push against being claimed by his shadowed empire. Min-soo leaned into her, whispering, "Draw the bad men, Noona, so he knows." She nodded, her pencil scratching faster. The sketch emerged. The black van by the river, license plate smudged but legible, partial numbers matching the traffic cam pull. Then the men, masks but details sharp, the dragon tattoo curling like smoke, a silver ring on one finger etched with a symbol Ji-hoon recognized. Triad, mid-level, but the ring. That was Syndicate. His syndicate. A lieutenant's mark, one he'd awarded years ago to a trusted dock foreman named Lee. Ji-hoon's fist clenched on the armrest, leather creaking under his grip. "Lee," he murmured, pulling out his phone to text his analyst. Cross-reference ring etch with personnel, quietly. The betrayal stung like salt in a fresh wound, echoing the loss of his sister. Gunned down in a setup he'd failed to see. Loyalty was his currency, but fear and ambition eroded it, turning brothers into knives in the dark. Soo-jin flipped the page, her expression intensifying. This drawing was different. Not the abduction, but the docks. Cranes silhouetted against the night sky, ships moored with names in Hangul, arrows pointed to discrepancies. A container marked textiles, with a side note scribbled in tiny script. Not cloth. Girls inside. Saw through crack. Time stamps at the bottom, matching weeks ago. She'd been watching, sketching what others overlooked, guard rotations off by 10 minutes, a burner phone exchange between Lee and a shadowed figure. "You saw this at the ports?" Ji-hoon asked, leaning forward. She met his gaze, nodding slowly, then wrote, "Halmeoni cleans offices there. I wait outside, draw boats. One night, heard whispers, van same as tonight." Her hand paused, adding, "They think I know too much, used me to get to you." The pieces slotted in. The children's path to the Golden Dragon wasn't chance. Lee, or someone close, had orchestrated it, using the Halmeoni's old ties to Hanseong lore. Stories of the boss who protected the vulnerable, a debt twisted into leverage, roots traded for silence. Ji-hoon's possessiveness flared. These kids, this girl with her silent fire, were under his roof now, part of his code. But her ethics clashed, independence screaming in every hesitant glance, refusing to be a pawn in his war. Torres entered from the kitchen, a tray of steaming mugs in hand. Hot chocolate for the kids, black coffee for the adults. Analyst confirms Lee's been skimming manifests, small hits but building, triads bought in last month, and boss. That burner from the warehouse? Last ping traced to a proxy in Koreatown, close to the bar. Ji-hoon accepted the mug, the heat seeping through ceramic like a promise of clarity. Bring him in, quiet, no alarms. But as Torres nodded and slipped out, a distant rumble shook the house. Not thunder, but engines, low and circling the block. Headlights swept the blinds, tires crunching on gravel from the alley. False alarm or the storm's echo? Sujin tensed, grabbing the notepad protectively. Min-soo buried his face in her shoulder. Ji-hoon rose, signaling silence, his hand drifting to the Beretta on the side table. The safe house's cameras whirred on the monitor nearby. Grainy feed showing 2 sedans idling at the corner, no markings, but the driver's postures screamed surveillance. Distant watchers, testing the edges. "They're here," he said softly, eyes locking with Sujin's. In that moment, the pull sharpened, his world of loyalty and shadows offering protection, hers of quiet observation demanding trust. But as the engines cut off, doors creaking open in the night, a new message buzzed on the recovered burner. "The drawings aren't all. Check the Halmioni's locket." Footsteps echoed on the porch, soft but deliberate. Was the betrayal deeper than Lee, rooted in family ties long buried? And what secret in that locket could force Ji-hoon's hand, or break his code forever? The footsteps on the porch paused, a deliberate hesitation that stretched like a taut wire in the dim safe house. Ji-hoon froze, his fingers brushing the Beretta's grip, the cool steel a familiar anchor amid the rising pulse in his veins. The air inside thickened, carrying the faint, oily scent of rain-soaked asphalt seeping under the doorframe, mingling with the bitter edge of cooling coffee. Sujin clutched the notepad to her chest, her knuckles white, while Min-soo pressed against her, eyes squeezed shut as if willing the shadows away. Torres materialized from the hallway, silenced pistol drawn, his broad frame blocking the kitchen archway. "2 outside, boss. No breach yet. Scouts, probably. Cameras show them peeling off toward the lake." He glanced at the monitor, where the sedan's taillights faded into the night, swallowed by the Echo Park haze. False alarm or a probe? The Syndicate's world thrived on such games, distant watchers testing resolve without committing to the strike. Ji-hoon exhaled slowly, holstering the weapon but keeping it loose. Double the patrols, and get that locket from the Halmioni's place, quiet, before dawn. The message on the burner phone burned in his mind. "The drawings aren't all. Check the Halmioni's locket." Sujin's sketches had cracked open the betrayal, pointing to Lee and the Triad's infiltration. But this, it hinted at roots deeper than a dock foreman's greed, tangled in the family's quiet history near the ports. Sujin met his gaze, her silence louder than words, a flicker of conflict in her eyes, trust warring with the instinct to run, her autonomy a fragile shield against his encroaching protection. She nodded once, then scribbled on the notepad. Halmioni's locket, old from father. He worked ships before. Gone. Gone. The word hung, evoking Ji-hoon's own ghosts, the sister lost to crossfire, her memory the forge of his code. No innocence, no loose ends that bled into the vulnerable. But saving them meant pulling them deeper, possessiveness clashing with her evident need for space. "Rest," he said, voice low, gesturing to the back room with its cot and lock cabinets. "Torres will watch." Min-soo tugged at his sister's sleeve, already half asleep, but Sujin lingered, her pencil hovering. Finally she wrote, "Why help? We nothing to you." The question pierced, raw in its simplicity. Ji-hoon leaned closer, the lamp's glow etching lines on his scarred face. "Because someone has to. And your drawings. They see what I missed." It was half-truth. The full pull was her quiet strength, a mirror to the independence he'd buried under layers of command. She searched his eyes, then tore the page, crumpling it before following her brother. The door clicked shut, leaving Ji-hoon alone with Torres, the house settling into watchful quiet. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the barred windows like impatient fingers. He pulled the burner from his pocket, its cracked screen a relic of the warehouse trap. No new messages, but the analyst's ping arrived. Locket intel. Halmioni's husband was Hanseong runner, pre-your time. Vanished 98, smuggling bust. Locket held microfilm, old school. Microfilm, a relic from his father's era when ledgers were hidden in plain sight, codes etched to evade digital sweeps. The betrayal widened. Lee wasn't the source, he was the tool. Someone had revived an old grudge, using the children's proximity to the docks as leverage. Ji-hoon's code demanded retribution, but loyalty frayed at the edges, suspicion poisoning even Torres's steady nod, ambition versus prudence, strike now or unravel the thread without shattering the empire. Dawn crept in grey and reluctant, the safe house stirring with the aroma of fresh rice from the kitchenette. Ji-hoon hadn't slept, his mind mapping routes. Halmione's apartment near the ports, a modest walk-up shadowed by looming cranes. Torres returned from the recon, a small velvet pouch in hand, face grim under the stubble. Got it. She's shaken but safe, didn't ask questions. Guards on her now. Ji-hoon took the locket, a simple gold oval on a frayed chain, warm from being carried. He pried it open under the kitchen light, the click echoing like a confession. Inside, no photo, just a thin slip of film, yellowed but intact. Slipping it into a reader on his tablet, the image resolved, a ledger scan, dates from '98, shipments marked, special cargo, rerouted through Triad allies. Names jumped out, his father's signature and below a collaborator, Kim Tae-woo, the Halmione's husband, but circled in red, a discrepancy, funds siphoned, pointed to an inside man, his uncle, the one who'd mentored him after the family fracture. Legacy, Ji-hoon breathed, the word tasting like ash. The code he'd inherited, protect the bloodline, had cracks from the start. Tae-woo's vanishing wasn't a bust, it was erasure, a rival covering tracks. And now, echoes in the present, Lee peddling routes, using Soo-jin's observations to force a trade. The girl wasn't just bait, she was the unwitting witness. Her sketches reviving a ghost that could expose the syndicate's rotten core. Torres peered over his shoulder, whistling low. This goes public. We're done. Triads'll feast. But before Ji-hoon could respond, Soo-jin emerged from the back, hair tousled, eyes sharp. She pointed to the tablet, then wrote urgently, "Saw locket once. Father said it was key to truth. Men at docks, same names?" Her independence shone, pushing past fear to claim her part, ethics demanding she expose the lie that had orphaned her family. Ji-hoon nodded, the pull intensifying, her autonomy fueling his resolve, yet stirring a possessive urge to barricade her from the fallout. It is, but truth costs. As if on cue, his phone buzzed, an intercepted call log from Lee's burner, time-stamped now. Boss en route to ports. Hit the convoy, take the girl if she's there. The safe house's alarms didn't blare, but the distant wail of sirens pierced the morning fog, rival factions mobilizing or a staged diversion. Torres grabbed his keys. "We move. Halmione's place first. Consolidate." But Soo-jin shook her head, scribbling, "No, docks, end it." Her eyes challenged him, loyalty to her brother and lost father overriding caution. Ji-hoon felt the code bend. Protection meant alliance, not ownership. The convoy assembled outside, engines rumbling like a gathering storm, black SUVs gleaming under the overcast sky. As they pulled out, tires humming on the dew-kissed streets, a shadow flickered in the rear view. A trailing sedan, unmarked, weaving through traffic, surveillance closing in or the hammer falling, and if the locket's truth unraveled his uncle's ghost, would Soo-jin's silent voice be the one to seal the betrayal or doom them all? The convoy sliced through the morning fog like a predator on the prowl, black SUVs humming along the elevated freeway toward the port of Los Angeles. The air inside Ji-hoon's lead vehicle carried the faint, briny tang of the ocean, seeping through the vents despite the sealed windows, mingling with the leather polish and the subtle sweat of tension. Sujin sat rigid in the back seat beside Min Su, her notepad balanced on her knees, pencil tracing absent patterns, waves perhaps, or escape routes. The boy dozed against her shoulder, oblivious to the stakes sharpening like a blade. Ji-hoon glanced in the rear view, his eyes narrowing at the trailing sedan, a silver import. 2 cars back, weaving just enough to blend but not vanish. "Torres, shake it," he said, voice clipped, the scar on his cheek pulling tight. Torres nodded from the passenger seat, radioing the team. "Flank and peel. Make it look routine." The SUVs accelerated subtly, merging lanes with the precision of a choreographed dance, horns blaring faintly from startled commuters. The sedan hesitated, and then dropped back, swallowed by the sprawl of container trucks rumbling toward the terminals. But the unease lingered, a knot in Ji-hoon's gut. The locket's microfilm burned in his pocket, its revelations a poison pill. His uncle's hand in the '98 siphon, Tae-woo's disappearance not a random bust, but a silencing. Legacy wasn't glory, it was rot, festering under the code he'd built his life on. Protect the innocent, honor the blood. Sujin's sketches had illuminated it, her silent ethics clashing with his possessive drive to contain the fallout. She wasn't his to claim, yet the thought of her exposed at the docks twisted like a betrayal of his own. They descended into the port's labyrinth, the air thickening with diesel fumes and the metallic screech of cranes, hoisting containers like mechanical giants. Sodium lights buzzed overhead even in daylight, casting harsh shadows on the endless stacks of red, blue, and rusted steel boxes, their labels peeling in the salt-laced wind. Gulls wheeled above the berths, their cries piercing the low rumble of ship engines idling in the harbor. The Los Angeles River fed into this sprawl, its concrete banks a stark reminder of where the nightmare began, smuggling veins pulsing with illicit cargo. Torres pulled up to the Hanseong Secure Yard, a fenced perimeter patrolled by guards in unmarked vests, their eyes scanning from chain-link towers. The gate slid open with a hydraulic whine, admitting the convoy onto cracked asphalt, slick with recent rain. Ji-hoon stepped out first, the chill wind whipping his coat, carrying the oily scent of tar and far-off welders' sparks. "Lee's office, now!" he ordered, motioning Sujin and Min Su to stay in the vehicle with a secondary guard. She shook her head, scribbling quickly. "I come." Saw him. Her independence flared, a quiet defiance that both irked and drew him, autonomy versus the safety he demanded to provide. Reluctantly, he nodded, the group moving toward the prefab building at the yard's edge, its windows fogged from the humidity. Inside, the air was stale, humming with fluorescent tubes and the clack of keyboards from a skeleton crew. Lee was there, hunched over a desk cluttered with manifests and coffee-stained ledgers, his face paling as Ji-hoon entered like a storm front. The foreman was mid-40s, paunchy, with the silver ring still glinting on his finger, the one Ji-hoon had given him a decade ago for loyalty in a turf skirmish. "Boss!" Lee stammered, rising too quickly, chair scraping. "Heard about the warehouse trouble? You good?" Ji-hoon didn't sit, his presence filling the cramped space. "Cut the act, the van, the kids, the roots, your ink's all over it." He tossed the burner phone onto the desk, its cracked screen displaying the intercepted call log. Torres flanked the door, hand near his holster, while Sujin lingered in the threshold, her eyes locked on Lee, notepad ready. Lee's gaze darted to the ring, then to her, sweat beading on his brow. "I don't know what." "Save it." Ji-hoon slid the tablet across, the microfilm scan glowing. Names, dates, the circled discrepancy linking back to the uncle. "Tae-woo, your old run. Triads paid you then. Paying now. Using the girl as bait to flip my lanes." Lee's facade cracked, hands trembling as he sank back. "It wasn't personal. Your uncle. He owed them after '98. I just settled the debt. The kids were leverage. Halmione's stories made you the mark." "Easy." Sujin's pencil flew. "Father gone because of you?" She shoved the page at him, her silent rage a palpable force, ethics demanding truth over the fear knotting her frame. Lee swallowed, voice dropping. Not me. The boss's brother, your uncle, framed him to cover the skim. Triads cleaned it up. Locket was the proof. I found it in old files. Sold it to close the loop. The confession hung, loyalty fracturing like brittle glass. Ji-hoon's code screamed, strike the turncoat. But prudence held him. Lee was a thread, not the core. Ambition had twisted the man, but the ghost of his uncle loomed larger, a past loss shaping this present betrayal. You're done, he said finally, signaling Torres. Cuff him, interrogate later, no blood. As Torres zip-tied Lee's wrists, a sharp crack echoed outside, tires on gravel, too fast. Alarms blared from the yard speakers, red lights pulsing. Through the window, chaos unfolded, 2 triad vans breaching the gate, enforcers spilling out with suppressed rifles, the dragon tattoos stark under the crane's shadows. Gunfire popped, guards returning fire from cover, bullets pinging off containers like hail on tin. "Ambush!" Torres yelled, drawing his weapon. Ji-hoon grabbed Soo-jin, pulling her and the waking Min-soo toward the back exit, the air filling with the acrid bite of cordite. To the dock! Secondary boat! The building shook as a round shattered the front glass, shards tinkling like ice. They burst into the yard, ducking behind a stack of pallets, the wind carrying shouts in Korean. Get the girl! Ledgers too! Soo-jin pointed to a shadowed berth, where a Hansong trawler bobbed, its engines already warming from Torres's earlier relay. They sprinted, feet pounding wet concrete, Min-soo between them, the boy's cries lost in the fray. A bullet whined past, embedding in a crate with a thud. Close, human error in the storm of movement. Ji-hoon's possessiveness surged, arm shielding Soo-jin as they boarded, the deck slick underfoot, ropes creaking in the gusts. The boat lurched free, propellers churning the harbour water into froth, the port receding in a blur of smoke and sodium lights. But in the chaos, Ji-hoon spotted it. The trailing sedan from earlier, now parked at the fence line, a figure watching with binoculars. Not triads. The stance was familiar, too calculated. His uncle's old lieutenant, risen in the ranks. As the trawler cut toward open water, waves slapping the hull, Soo-jin wrote on a salvage manifest scrap, "Not over, Locket points higher." Her eyes met his, trust tentative, the bond forged in fire, yet strained by her unyielding independence. The real betrayer wasn't Lee, it was woven into the syndicate's heart, but who in the inner circle had revived the uncle's ghost, and would, pulling that thread, spare them, or drag the silent girl into the depths forever? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The trawler's engines throbbed like a heartbeat in overdrive, cutting through the choppy harbor waves as the port of Los Angeles shrank to a hazy silhouette against the morning mist. Salt spray stung Ji-hoon's face, mingling with the diesel exhaust that belched from the stern, the hull rocking rhythmically under the swell. Soo-jin stood at the rail beside him, wind whipping her hair, notepad clutched like a talisman. While Min-soo huddled below deck with a guard, the boy's whimpers muffled by the roar of the propellers. The air tasted of brine and urgency, the distant cry of gulls underscoring the fragile escape. Torres gripped the wheel in the pilot house, his knuckles white on the scarred wood, eyes flicking to the radar screen where blips danced like threats. "Clear for now, boss." Triad boats are holding at the buoys. Cops on the water might have spooked 'em, but that sedan at the fence. Plates a ghost, routed through a rental in San Pedro. He adjusted course, the boat veering toward a private slip in San Pedro's industrial fringe, away from the main channels where patrols hummed with routine vigilance. Ji-hoon nodded, his coat flapping open to reveal the holstered Beretta, the weight a constant reminder of costs unpaid. The Locket's microfilm had cracked the facade. Lee was a pawn, his confession a breadcrumb leading upward. But Soo-jin's last scribble echoed, Not over. Lockett points higher. Her presence at his side stirred the conflict anew, his instinct to shield her clashing with the fire in her eyes. That unyielding autonomy, refusing to be tucked away like a ledger entry. She wasn't cargo, she was the variable upending his code, demanding he confront not just betrayal, but the possessiveness that risked binding her too tight. They docked at a shadowed berth, the trawler's fenders bumping against weathered pilings that reeked of creosote and tidal rot. A chain-link gate creaked open, admitting them to a secure boathouse, Hanxiong's fallback, a low-slung concrete bunker disguised as a fishing supply depot, its interior lit by humming fluorescents and lined with tool benches hiding server racks. Guards materialized from the gloom, their boots echoing on the damp floor, radios crackling with perimeter checks. The air inside was cooler, laced with the metallic tang of rust and the faint ozone from surveillance monitors flickering to life. "Lock it down," Ji-hoon ordered, guiding Soo-jin inside. Min-soo trailed, rubbing sleep from his eyes, the safe space's sterility a balm after the chaos. Torres secured the Lockett's film on an encrypted tablet, projecting it onto a wall screen. The 98 ledger. Shipments rerouted. Funds vanishing into offshore shells. Names scrolled, his uncle's bold signature, Taewoo's frantic notes in the margins. Double cross. Tel Kang. But circled in faded ink, a code for a safe deposit box in Busan, key held by J.S. Jang Sung-ho, his uncle's former lieutenant, now his second in command, the man who'd risen after the family losses. Whispering counsel in boardrooms and back alleys, Ji-hoon's jaw tightened, the scar on his cheek pulling like a warning. Jang, loyal for years, his behavioral tells always subtle. A slight hesitation in meetings, eyes lingering on manifests too long. Ambition masked as prudence, trust eroded by old debts. The code demanded confrontation, but exposure could fracture the syndicate. Rivals, like the triads circling the wound. Soo-jin studied the screen, her pencil scratching on fresh paper. She sketched Jang from memory. Halmeoni's stories, dockside glimpses, sharp features, a gold watch glinting under sodium lights. Then arrows linking to the locket, a question mark over the Busan box. "He knew father?" she wrote, shoving it toward Ji-hoon. Her ethics burned through the silence, pushing for truth over the safety he'd impose, her independence a quiet rebellion against his world of guarded alliances. "Yeah," Ji-hoon said, voice low, meeting her gaze. The pull intensified, gratitude for her insight, warring with the urge to send her away to a penthouse far from the fray. "He ran with my uncle. If he's reviving this, it's to claim the throne. Your father's proof was the threat." But as he spoke, a guard burst in from the side door, rain dripping from his cap. "Boss, drone feed, unmarked chopper circling a mile out. Low alt, no transponder, and Jang's calling in, says he's en route from Koreatown. Convoy hit a snag." Suspicion coiled like smoke. Torres cross-checked the call log, spoofed again. Routed through a proxy near the river. "He's not coming, he's buying time." Perimeter cams show a panel van idling at the access road 2 blocks east. Black, no plates, like the river grab. The tension spiked, the boathouse's hum turning oppressive. Ji-hoon signaled evacuation. Back to the trawler, alternate route up the coast. But Soo-jin grabbed his arm, writing furiously, "No run, confront. Lockett's key, get it first." Her eyes challenged him, loyalty to her lost father overriding fear, bonds tested by the external pressure closing in. Min-soo watched, wide-eyed, the human cost etched in his small frame. Ji-hoon's possessiveness flared. He couldn't lose her to this, not after the warehouse shadows, but her resolve mirrored his code's core. Face the beast, protect the vulnerable. "Torres, you take the kids north. I'll handle Jang." A beat of silence, then Sujin shook her head, scribbling, "Together or nothing." The push-pull hung, autonomy demanding partnership, not protection. Outside, the fog thickened, muffling the chopper's distant thrum as it banked closer, rotors slicing the mist like a predator's wings. The panel van accelerated down the access road, tires hissing on wet gravel, headlights piercing the haze toward the boathouse gate. Guards scrambled to positions, rifles clicking, the air electric with impending breach. Torres fired up the engines, but Ji-hoon pulled Sujin toward a side jeep. Min-soo bundled in. "Busan leads a feint. Jang's here, now." The van crashed the gate, metal screeching, enforcers piling out. Not triads, but syndicate insiders, faces familiar from dock shifts, guns raised under Jang's command. He stepped from the passenger side, silver hair slicked back, watch catching the light. "Ji-hoon," he called, voice smooth over the wind. "The girl's drawings, sloppy. Time to settle the old debt. Uncle's legacy, mine by right." Gunfire erupted, sporadic bursts pinging off the boathouse walls. A guard dropping with a grunt. Injured, not fatal, the acrid smoke blooming in the fog. Ji-hoon returned fire from the jeep's cover, shielding the siblings, the vehicle lurching forward in a spray of gravel. Sujin pointed to Jang's coat pocket. A bulge, the locket's twin. Behavioral tell, his free hand hovered protectively. The chopper swooped low, downdraft scattering debris, its spotlight sweeping like a searchlight in a storm. Infiltration, Jang's air support, jamming comms with electronic pulses that crackled in Torres's earpiece. The jeep peeled out, convoy reforming behind, but a tire blew under suppressing fire, the rig fishtailing into a chain-link skid. Human error or sabotage? Ji-hoon kicked the door open, pulling Sujin clear as bullets whined past. The port's cranes looming like silent witnesses. They dove behind a container stack, Min-soo's breaths ragged, the girl's hand steady on her notepad even now. Jang advanced, enforcers fanning out, his voice carrying, "The locket's half the story. Taewoo's notes name you Ji-hoon, complicit in the skim. Step down or the triads get the full ledger." The revelation hit like a wave. His own past tangled, a father's choice in the shadows shaping the code he'd sworn. But Sujin's eyes met his, fierce, writing one word: lie. Trust versus suspicion, her intuition the anchor. As the chopper circled for another pass, rotors drowning the shouts, Ji-hoon squeezed off a shot, grazing Jang's arm, the man recoiling. Dropping a flash drive from his pocket, skittering across the asphalt. Torres's voice broke through the static. "Back up en route. Cops diverted, but hold." The enforcers closed in, the fog turning the scene into a labyrinth of echoes and half-seen threats. Ji-hoon lunged for the drive, fingers closing on cold metal, but Jang's laugh cut sharp. Too late, the real key's already sent. What data had Jang leaked, and would Sujin's silent truth be enough to reclaim the syndicate or seal their isolation in the fog forever? The fog clung to the San Pedro boathouse like a shroud, muting the staccato bursts of gunfire into muffled coughs that echoed off the container stacks. Salt spray from the nearby waves mixed with the acrid bite of cordite, stinging Ji-hoon's eyes as he rolled behind a rusted pallet, the flash drive clutched in his fist like a grenade pin. Sujin crouched beside him, her breath steady despite the chaos, shielding Min-soo with her body, the boy's face buried in her jacket. The chopper's rotors thrummed overhead, its downdraft whipping the mist into eddies that blurred the enforcers' advancing silhouettes. Jang's men, faces twisted in the sodium haze, their suppressed rifles spitting shadows. "Cover!" Ji-hoon barked, popping up to fire 2 controlled shots, the Beretta's recoil jolting his shoulder. One enforcer staggered, clutching his thigh, dropping to a knee with a grunt. The injury non-lethal, but enough to fracture their line. Torres echoed from the jeep's wreck, his pistol barking in rhythm. buying seconds as backup sirens wailed faintly from the main port, institutional limits turning the tide without full exposure. Jiang's voice sliced through the din, laced with triumph from behind a forklift's bulk. "The drive's a copy, nephew. The original's en route to the triads, full ledgers, your uncle's skim, Tae-Woo's end. Step aside, and maybe the girl lives." His arm hung limp from the graze, blood darkening his sleeve, but his eyes gleamed with the ambition that had festered for decades, prudence abandoned for the throne. Sujin shook her head fiercely, snatching a shard of broken crate as improvised cover, her free hand scribbling on a crumpled manifest. "Bluff." Watched him, nervous tells. Her insight cut sharp, born from dockside vigils. Ethics demanding she pierce the lie even as fear etched her posture. Ji-hoon's code surged, loyalty to the syndicate clashing with the protective pull toward this silent family he'd stumbled into, possessiveness yielding to the trust she forced from him. "Torres, jam the chopper. EMP pulse if you've got it," Ji-hoon called, the device a black market gadget tucked in the Jeep's kit. Its electromagnetic burst a credible counter to the aerial threat. Torres lunged, dodging a bullet that sparked off the asphalt and triggered it. The air hummed with a low whine, the chopper's spotlight flickering erratically before banking away, rotors stuttering in the electronic haze. Human error amplified, the pilot veered too sharp, clipping a crane arm with a metallic screech, forcing an emergency retreat toward the harbor's edge. The enforcers faltered, radios crackling with confusion as comms glitched. Ji-hoon seized the moment, charging forward in a low sprint, fog swirling around his boots like coiling serpents. Jiang fired wildly, the shot grazing Ji-hoon's side, a hot tear through fabric and flesh, pain blooming sharp but contained, no arterial spray, just enough to slow him, a cost etched in blood for the code's breach. He tackled Jiang against the forklift, the older man's watch clattering free, the two grappling in the slick mud, breaths ragged amid the diesel tang. "You're done," Ji-hoon growled, pinning Jiang's good arm, the flash drive digging into his palm. "The leak! Traced it. Your proxy bounced back to your own server. Sloppy, like the river grab." Jiang's eyes widened, the behavioral tells Sujin had spotted, a micro-twitch at the corner of his mouth, ambition crumbling under exposure. Torres's backup arrived then, 3 SUVs barreling through the breached gate, tires hydroplaning on the wet gravel. Guards piling out to disarm the remaining enforcers. No massacre, zip ties and subdued shouts. The Triad Alliance fracturing without the data's full spill. Jiang slumped as Torres cuffed him, spitting defiance. "Legacy's poison, boy! Your father's code blinded you. Mine would have ruled." Ji-hoon rose, hand pressed to his side, blood seeping warm through his fingers, the injury a stark reminder of victories bought dear. Sujin approached, Minsu trailing, her notepad extended. Truth-free, father avenged. No possession in her gaze, just the quiet autonomy that had drawn him, now laced with shared resolve. The syndicate's heart exposed but cauterized, ledgers secured, Jiang's network unraveling through internal audits. The cost and injury that sidelined him for weeks, exposure contained by swift institutional pulls on port security. Hours later, in a sterile hospital room overlooking the glittering sprawl of the city, the antiseptic smell mingled with the faint jasmine from a vase Sujin had insisted on. Stitches pulled at Ji-hoon's side, a dull throb underscoring the reflective quiet as rain pattered against the window, the storm's remnants washing clean the night's grime. Minsu slept on a cot, his small chest rising steadily, while Sujin sat nearby, sketching not threats, but horizons, ships on open seas, a family unbound by shadows. "You didn't have to stay," Ji-hoon said, voice softened by exhaustion. The pull between them resolved not in ownership but alliance. Her ethics had tested his code, loyalty forged in the fog's isolation, transforming betrayal into found family. She met his eyes. then reached for a fresh page, writing deliberately, "Belong nowhere else. Voice or not, we choose this." No grand pledge, just the believable commitment of survivors. Protection as trust, autonomy as strength. The locket, now hers, dangled from her neck, its secrets buried with Yang's confession, the true treasure, not power's spoils, but the memory of standing together against the depths. Outside, the river's distant hum carried on, a concrete vein healed by hard-won truths. The syndicate endured, leaner, his code refined. No innocence lost, legacies redeemed through sacrifice. As dawn broke, painting the room in soft gold, Ji-hoon realized the adventure's worth. Loyalty outlasting the ledgers, chosen family the anchor in a world of shifting tides. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.